All right, let's move on. I'm going to read you something from CTV News, and you may have experienced this, or you may be experiencing this as we move into the summer months and out of the house and into the backyard. Here's the article. The sounds of children laughing and playing outside are parts of the sounds of summer, but the backyard noises from one Calgary family have drawn the ire of neighbors. Karen Lloyd encourages her kids to play outside their Willow Park home as much as possible. She's got 4 kids, range in age from 6 to 13, often in the yard with friends, using the swing set, the slide, or their backyard trampoline. The family has lived in the home for nearly 5 years, but says about 3 summers ago, the neighbors began complaining about the backyard noise. One neighbor got angry and yelled at all of them and says Lloyd's 13-year-old daughter, Sarah. When our neighbors yelled at us, it was scary because we were like, whoa, said the little girl. Lloyd has tried to tell her kids to play more quietly, but admits it's difficult to do. She says, for 3 months now, I've been restricting the noise of the kids, even in the backyard, telling them they need to use their quieter voices, the kind of voice you would use indoors. She's tried to reason with the neighbors, but the complaints continue. One neighbor, Lynn Hawker, says the noise from the Lloyd's yard has left her unable to enjoy her own backyard. Quote, it's not the kids playing. I have no issue with that. It's the kids screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs every day, all the time, she says. According to the city of Calgary, residents have the right to not to be disturbed by noise, including yelling, loud music, power tools, and air conditioners. The city has noise restrictions that they don't come into effect until 10 o'clock at night, most days of the week. During the day, there can't be continuous noise exceeding 65 decibels. Kids playing at a splash pad would measure around that mark. A revving motorcycle, 102 decibels. The sounds of kids playing outside aren't usually loud enough to be a violation of the bylaw, says a person from the bylaw enforcement officers. We encourage kids to be out and about playing. The bylaws aren't there to stop them from playing and shouting back and forth. Lloyd even asked the city to measure the noise in her own yard. They told her there was no need because kids playing doesn't generate enough noise to warrant a bylaw infraction. She'd sent a note to the neighbors about the bylaws and, you know, what she's trying to do with her kids keeping quiet. Even made them some cookies. Apparently the cookies came back along with a note saying, you're not respecting other people and your children need to be quieter. Lloyd says she wants other families to know they're within the rights to have their children play outside. She says it's not about her family. It's about the city of Calgary. So, you got loud neighbors, and what happens when it's not the chainsaw or a barking dog or a loud music? It's the chitlins. It's the chitlins, which are apparently obese and need to be getting more activity. It's those kids that are making all the noise in our lives miserable. Let's bring in Gary Dierenfeld, social worker, yoursocialworker.com to find out more. He's with us now. Gary, keep your damn kids down. What's going on?
Come on, Thompson. Tone it down.
So, I've got kids. I know what it can be like. I remember before I had kids listening to the neighbors across the road and thinking, wow, they're awful loud. How do you address this?
You know, how sad that this family has a neighbor like that. You know, part of what was read in the newspaper article was the neighbor saying they're always, you know, she's using language that there's no way that these kids are always loud at that level every day and all day. So that's a reflection on the person making the complaint. It's really a sad day, isn't it? When our own kids can't play in their own backyard.
Well, that's half the time. That's why we send them out. They're making too much noise and stuff inside. Go out and roughhouse.
Right, and that's what we want them to do. And so I think this mother did everything that she could reasonably with this neighbor. She spoke to the bylaw officer. She wanted to make sure she was compliant with the law. She was. She wanted to share that information with the neighbor. She passed along in a note with cookies. It was basically, you know, tossed. The cookies were tossed back at her.
Now, that's not very neighborly, is it?
No, that's definitely not very neighborly. So sometimes you have to look at this stuff and say, you know, try as I might, this is a reflection on the other person. Now, having said that, it's not uncommon to have conflict with a neighbor, whether it's on the height of the fence, the flowers coming through the holes in the fence, the drainage. And the last thing we really want is for these things to go nuclear, as this issue has done.
Yeah.
And so that's where sometimes a mediator can be helpful. So rather than you're right, you're wrong, and we're just going to do this or not do this, if you bring in a mediator and understand, what's the nature of the complaint? How is it offending you? When is it offending you? Are there times of the day where it doesn't? We can have that kind of discussion.
But will a mediator work, Gary, if this person is convinced that those kids are making noise? I can hear them, and you know what that must be like. And I'm not certainly judging the people who are doing the complaining, but if you're upset about the kids making noise, and it's got to the point where this seems to have got, the kid breathing would probably irritate you. You know what I mean?
These are exactly the situations that all mediators walk into, isn't it? Where the parties are positional. I see black, I see white.
Yeah.
And you would think that at the get-go there would be no room for movement. But the magic of mediation isn't around necessarily understanding or fighting for one's position over the other. The magic of mediation is trying to dig underneath that and say, well, how is this offensive? When is it offensive? In what ways wouldn't it be offensive? So we ask a whole bunch more questions, which almost miraculously, it leads sometimes to self-evident solutions. Perhaps they have sensitive hearing, perhaps they're not well, perhaps there's someone who is affirmed, not well in that house who needs their rest. We need to understand more apart from, I don't like your kids barking and making noise. So
you believe there's an underlying reason over and above the noise of the kids?
Well, there may be. And again, that's the value of mediation. That's the value of somebody who is neutral, doesn't have a dog in the fight, and is only seeking to explore, what's underneath. And are there ways where we can, as a result of finding out what's underneath, negotiate a solution? There may be times of the day where it's appropriate. Times of the day where it's more offensive, if you will. So there are ways of discussing that. The other thing to do through mediation is maybe if the children were to meet with the neighbors, that you don't just send them over there to do that.
Yeah.
But,
maybe they went over with the cookies. That was the problem.
Right, but to facilitate that discussion as well, because part of what's being set up is good kids, bad neighbor.
Yeah.
And the kids will either be angry at that neighbor, they may grow a fear of that neighbor. And so by facilitating the relationship between them, the kids may also come to understand what is at issue for our neighbors, and they may more naturally want to be more mindful of their volume in consideration of the neighbors. So there are actually a lot of things a community mediator can bring to the problem. And many municipalities have people who can act in that capacity.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you can see how there might be a demand for one. The city needs an on-staff mediator just to negotiate with neighbors.
Well, why not? Because you and I both know there are often so many disputes between neighbors over too many things to list.
So how do you get these two parties, in this case neighbor A and B, one with kids, one complaining about the kids, how do you get them to agree to mediation? Especially when one wants it black, one wants it white.
Right. You say to them, if we could bring a mediator in to better understand the issues between you, we may be able to offer a solution where both of you come away winners.
You may arrive at a solution where you find out you've been very unreasonable.
We wouldn't be saying that. We wouldn't be saying
I might be too direct to be a counselor sometimes, Gary.
Yeah, I hear you.
But
by offering both parties a way out where they can maintain their dignity as well.
Yeah.
So no one has to be called the bad guy in this.
Right.
We just want to understand more fully what's going on. Because as soon as somebody starts by saying, and they're doing it all the time, well, already we know that isn't true. But I hear it all. You're doing it they're out there all the time doing this. Are they out there at midnight? No. Okay, so it's not quite all the time. So let's figure out what those times are and what is going on for you at those times where it might be interfering. Did you know that they're out there also at times when you're out shopping or what? Is that okay? Well, of course it's okay because I'm not. Okay, so even if they're out there all the time, there are some times where it winds up not being offensive to you.
You should charge money to mediate this case. It would be hilarious.
And I do charge money to mediate. This is part of what I do professionally for a living between warring separated parents.
So let me ask you this. Clearly, these people have not gone the role of mediator because now it's in the media. So if you're a neighbor who's complaining and you find out that Noisy Family has now gone to the local TV station about this and, people are starting to identify, oh, you're the grumpy neighbor.
Right.
How do you think this adds to the mix?
Right. It certainly inflames it, and it makes beginning in mediation more problematic. People do need a safe space. They need to protect their ego, and so the mediator has to come in from a respectful position and say, look, you guys are causing each other to both look like horses to toots. That's not working for either of you. Maybe there's something that we can do to give you both a way out where you both feel good at it at the end of the day.
If they don't, what's the alternative? I mean, can you see something like this accelerating until something disturbing happens?
Well, there really is few alternatives because they can choose to escalate it. They can choose to be bitter, feuding enemies forever. One of them can get so disgruntled they feel like moving away. And thank goodness we're talking about children and some elderly neighbors, so I don't think anyone's going to go postal, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But in other circumstances, these are the kinds of things that can set off violent behavior between people or retaliatory passive-aggressive behavior. You'll find dog crap on your front lawn one day, and you'll wonder, where did that come from? So we do want to offer people a way out. Mediation really is the structure in these circumstances.
Can you tell from reading this article whether it's about several neighbors that are saying this or if it's just one? Because that's where I sort of lost it on this.
I know. I read that article a couple of times trying to figure that piece out.
Yeah.
And I got the sense that really it's one neighbor, but the mother wanted to, I get the sense the mother wanted to take it public so that other families would understand what the bylaws are so that their kids could go out and play without harassment.
Another interesting question would be what happens in the winter? I mean, are they better in the winter? Are they still out there making lots of noise in the winter? Are you enjoying your yard in the winter? Is it when you're shoveling you can hear them,
I always took the view as a parent and living in beautiful Dundas here, we always had a basketball net on the front driveway. And I told all the kids in the neighborhood, you have my permission to use that net day in, day out, whenever you want. Mm-hmm. And if there's a car in the driveway, knock on the door. We'll get the car moved so that you can continue to play basketball. And, I like being a good neighbor, and I like to know that the kids are on the front there playing b-ball because I know that they're not getting into trouble elsewhere.
Yeah, good point.
So hopefully cooler heads will prevail.
And when I heard this story, I reflect back to my time at my parents' house when I was much younger, and I loved music. And it would not be uncommon for us to play loud music. And now that I look at it, I think, I don't know how we didn't get complaints from people. Right. So obviously, the neighbors just put up with it. But you understand how it can get out of hand, I guess.
Yeah. I'll throw out another strategy. And I don't know if I love this strategy, but I throw out strategies anyways. It's what I do for a living. But imagine if the kids were to go next door and apologize.
Yeah.
And the kids themselves say, we're so sorry that we hurt your feelings by being loud. Can we make it up to you? Would you like us to cut your lawn, help you with your groceries? Because, again, through relationships, it's harder to get angry at nice people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Could it be that the family is too loud? I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Maybe. Maybe, but,
Because I remember one kid on our street, and, it's just the age that they go through. And she was just finding her voice. She was like a 3-4-year-old, 2-3-4-year-old, somewhere in there, toddler. And she was finding her voice. So all of a sudden she would just scream.
Yeah,
she would just
freak.
Exactly. And it'd scare the bejeebers right out of you. But like anything, they grow out of that. But, maybe it's a scenario like that the neighbor's complaining about.
And, that's the benefit of going in with a mediator, to really figuring this stuff out. And if the neighbors wanted to, of course, they could audio record the noise, and we could learn if it was anything out of the norm for kids playing. But again, that's all kind of extreme. I prefer things that break down the walls, if you will, in these circumstances.
What do you think is going to happen out of this article? What do you think life's going to be like on this weekend in Willow Park?
I think it's going to be miserable because people will zero in on where it is and who it is, and someone's going to be vilified and embarrassed by it. And how do you manage that? You manage that typically by becoming more positional and more angry. And so this has all the makings of creating a bigger problem.
We were talking about the situation that happened in a London grocery store earlier on in the week with the Muslim woman. It now appears that the person, the alleged attacker, has now been arrested. Surprised so quickly?
No, I'm not surprised that happened so quickly. There was a perfect image of her posted around Facebook. It showed up on my Facebook feed. Mm-hmm. And, welcome to, 2016. You can't pick your nose without somebody catching you on video.
Do you think we've learned because this person has been apprehended?
Say that again.
Do you think we've learned anything because this person has been apprehended?
I don't know if we've learned anything whatsoever. People continue to do stupid things, and other people are there with 1,000 smartphones to capture it. And so, we've had this conversation several times in the past. We got to be mindful of where we're carrying on our dirty business. Maybe
by the end of the weekend we'll have some video footage of this Calgary family's backyard.
Who knows? As you say that, I'm surprised we don't already have it.
Exactly.
At least the plate of cookies and the note coming back.
That's right, yeah. And maybe a neighbor shaking a fist over a fence.
Yeah. So listen, if there's anyone listening to us, I think there's one or two people listening to you and me, and if you are one of those persons who are in a dispute with your neighbor, I want to encourage you to look for ways to facilitate the relationship rather than make it worse. I don't know if the city of Hamilton has mediators on staff, but, phone and ask and see if that is a strategy that might be available to us here to help resolve differences with our neighbors. So we don't need to involve the lawyers. We don't need to go to small claims court. We don't need to, hurl things back and forth. We can find a peaceful solution.
Or, of course, you can just call Gary, yoursocialworker.com. Gary Dierenfeld has been with us. Gary, as always, thanks for the time. Have a great weekend.
All the best, my friend.
Take care. It is one.